Hey, what is up guys? So the other day I came to the realization that after doing hundreds of how-to videos for cars on this channel, I've really never done one about driving. So today's video is going to be how to drive stick shift or manual transmission for your very first time. So my first manual car was a 2004 Scion XB 5-speed. Now before you laugh, it actually was a really great car for that point in my life. And naturally, before I got it, I went on YouTube and I watched tons of how-to videos on how to drive stick shift. And while I found them helpful, I found that a lot of them were overcomplicated to the point where it almost felt a little bit intimidating. And then when I drove the XB for the very first time, I was actually surprised at just how easy it was to drive a manual transmission. So in this video, I'm really going to focus on keeping all the explanations as simple as possible. That way, when you guys go out to drive stick for your very first time, you feel comfortable and confident with it. So that's what this video is going to be about. Now this will be a little bit longer than my normal videos. So I'm going to put a table of contents on screen here for a few seconds. That way, if you want to skip around or maybe you want to try some of these things that I show you and then come back to the video, you'll be able to pick up where you left off. So anyway, let's get right into driving stick for your very first time. So before we start driving, I'll just go over the controls here really briefly. So next to your gas and brake pedal, you've got a clutch pedal, and you're going to use that when you start the car up. And you're also going to push it down anytime that you shift gears. You can almost think of the clutch as unlocking the shifter if you want to look at it that way. Now the only thing to remember about the clutch is that anytime you press it down, you'll be pressing it all the way down to the floor. So you may need to adjust your seat accordingly, that way you can reach the pedal. In the center here, we've got the shifter, and the best analogy that I have for this is you can kind of think of first gear as a heavy weightlifter. So it takes a lot of strength and a lot of energy to get a 3,000 pound plus car rolling from a dead stop. That's where our weightlifter friend comes in, but the problem is he can't run very fast, so we'll have to shift into higher and higher gears. Now fifth and sixth you can kind of think of as a marathon runner, and while he may not be able to bench press a lot of weight, he can run pretty fast, and he does it in a way that conserves energy and conserves fuel. That's why cars do so well on the highway with gas mileage, but they get pretty bad gas mileage in first gear and stop and go traffic. Before you start driving, it's a good idea to just get a feel for how the shifter works. So right now it's in neutral, that means that it's not in any gear at all. We'll go all the way to the left and forward for first, back from there for second, let it fall to the middle and push forward for third, straight back for fourth, then all the way to the right, forward for fifth, and straight back from there for sixth. To start the car, hold the clutch all the way down to the floor and either press the button or turn the key, whatever your car has, and it'll fire right up. I like to start mine in neutral, that way, you know, if it's in a gear and I forget, and I take my foot off the clutch, it's not just going to jump forward, and maybe if I'm in a parking lot it might hit another car or something, so you definitely don't want to do that. I like to start off in neutral, but that's just me. So once you get pretty comfortable with the controls of the car, you're ready to start rolling. So all you have to do is push the clutch all the way in, put the car in first gear, and then without even giving it any gas, I'm just going to ease off the clutch slowly, and you'll see the car start moving just like that. So let's try that again. Back at a standstill in neutral, I'm going to push the clutch all the way down, first gear. I'm not giving it any gas, I'm just easing off the clutch, and away we go. So I would just do that a few times until you get comfortable with it. After you do it for a while, you actually feel that point where the clutch engages. So yeah, I would just do that a few times, find a nice open parking lot like this where you can just practice getting the car rolling from a stop just like that. So for shifting gears, every car is a little bit different. I like to shift around 2,500 RPM, which is a little bit conservative. That'll save you some gas, but that's just what I like to do. So clutch all the way in, first gear. This time we're going to give it a little bit of gas so we can get rolling here. And then once I hit 2,500, I'm just going to push the clutch all the way down to the floor and go into second gear, and then get back on the gas for a nice smooth transition. Okay, let's try that again. Coming to a complete stop here. Clutch all the way in, first gear. Give it some gas up to 2,500 RPM. Then clutch all the way to the floor, second gear. Notice that every time I do that, I'm actually taking my foot off the gas for a moment as I shift gears. That'll keep the car from over revving during the shifting. So let's do that one more time. Gonna come to a complete stop right now. Clutch in, first gear. Let's give it some gas up to 2500. And then shift. Now when I turn around, let's go into third gear. 2500 RPM, clutch all the way to the floor, and just shift into third. Then coming to a stop, we'll leave it in gear until we're just about to stop. Then we'll take it out of gear, put it in neutral, and you're good. All right, so now let's talk about parking. So right now I'm pulling into a parking space. I'm gonna push the clutch in. Right now it's just in neutral, so I'm coming to a stop. And now what I do is I put the car in first gear. I'll pull up on the handbrake, so I've got the car in gear and I've got the brake on. Then I can safely shut the car off. And now there's pretty much no way that the car is going to move because the transmission's locked in gear, and also this is locking the brake, so we're good to go. We can get out of the car. We don't have to worry about it rolling or bumping into anyone else's car. So that's what I like to do. Some people only use the handbrake. I've seen some people who only use the transmission, but if you do both, it's really safe, and you really can't go wrong if you do it that way. All right, so let's talk about reverse. So the funny thing about this car, you know, every car, the reverse gear is a little bit different. And when I test drove this car, the salesman let me go by myself, which was actually pretty cool. But I pulled into a parking spot and then I couldn't figure out how to get the car in reverse. I know it's kind of embarrassing, but on this car, what you do is you're gonna hold down the clutch and then reverses all the way to the left. And then there's a little notch there. You really have to give it some strength and then it'll go into reverse. So reverse is actually the exact same process as rolling forward in first gear. So you're going to do clutch all the way to the floor, put the car in reverse, and then without giving any gas, we're just going to use the clutch to control our speed. So gently ease off the clutch and you'll actually feel the car start to go backwards. Now the big difference here is that as I'm easing off, I'm not going to take my foot all the way off because you'll go really fast in reverse. Obviously, you don't want to do that, you know, back into someone. So just not even halfway, you'll start to roll backwards. That way you can turn out of your parking spot safely. Then just shift into first gear and you're good to go. All right, so once you start to feel a little bit comfortable with shifting in the parking lot, you're ready to go out onto the road. So yeah, this is the fun part. Now here's an interesting thing to bring up. When you're coming up to a stoplight, you don't want to just you know, chill at the light with your foot on the clutch, you know, in first gear. What I like to do is keep the car in neutral. I kind of pay attention to the light cycle and the flow of traffic, and I can kind of predict when the light's about to turn green. But you don't want to just be sitting here for an extended time with the car in first gear with your foot on the clutch. That'll actually wear out the clutch and the pressure plate a little bit. So don't put it in first gear until the moment that you're ready to turn or pull out. So yeah, just pay attention to that. All right, so we're in second gear already here, 2500. I'm gonna shift third, fourth, fifth. So on a road like this, the speed limit's 50, and fifth gear is usually pretty good for this car. Sixth gear, I only use on the highway just because on a road like this, 50 miles and under, I just don't have any acceleration at all in sixth gear. So that's why I keep it in fifth if I'm going on a 45 or 50 mile an hour road. So now we're coming up to a roundabout. I have to slow down a little bit, but probably won't have to come to a complete stop. So let's see. Maybe I will have to stop for this one. Oh, nice Mercedes. So we're about to go, so I'll put it in first and just take off. Second, third, so this time we're slowing down, but we don't have to come to a complete stop, so I'm going to go down into second gear instead of first and just pick up right where we left off. It's funny because a lot of people say, well, I don't want a manual car because it's too much work, but once you get going, once you're cruising at, you know, your regular speed, you don't really have to do anything. You know, you don't see me just constantly messing with this thing. There have been road trips where I've been on the highway for 5 hours without even touching the clutch or the shifter. So once you get the car moving, it's really not that bad at all. There's really not a whole lot to think about, but it's just funny that some people think that way. So a concern that a lot of people have when it comes to driving manual cars is what do you do when you're on a hill and you have to start on a hill? Luckily with this car, it's got a cool feature where it'll actually hold the brake for a couple seconds to keep the car from rolling backwards, just long enough for you to move your foot over to the gas pedal. That way you can safely take off without the car rolling back. On my old car, on the XB, it didn't have that and it would start rolling backwards immediately. So you definitely don't want to try to balance the gas and the clutch to try to hold the car in place. Just keep your foot on the brake until you're ready to pull out, put the car in first gear, and then just give it some gas and you can take off. Let's do a little BMW turn signal action here, and we're good to go. So one important piece of advice that my dad gave me when he was teaching me how to drive stick is that the brake is always the brake. It doesn't matter what gear you're in. If you panic, you forget what you're doing, you can always stop the car using the brake pedal no matter what. Now that you know the basics of how to drive a manual transmission car, let me just go over really quick some of the things that you should not do. So number one, you don't want to drive around with your foot just resting on the clutch pedal. That'll actually wear it out, and there's a space next to the clutch called the dead pedal where you can rest your foot. It's a lot more comfortable to drive like that, and it's a lot easier on the car because you're not putting that unnecessary wear and tear on the clutch. Along those same lines, you also don't want to drive around with your hand just resting on the shifter. That's actually bad for it. So whenever you're driving, just both hands on the wheel until you're ready to shift gears, and then put your hand back on the steering wheel, nice and safe. When you're doing your hill start, some people like to try to balance the gas and the clutch at the same time to try to hold the car in place, and that's actually really bad for the clutch. It'll wear it out pretty fast if you do that. So until the moment that you're ready to pull out, I would definitely hold down the brake pedal and then just use the gas and pull out. But you don't want to just be sitting there like halfway pushing the throttle and halfway pushing the clutch to try to balance the car. That'll wear out the clutch, and you don't want to do that. Alright guys, well that's all I have for this video, and again, this was just meant to be a really basic thing to help you learn how to drive stick for your very first time. So if you feel more comfortable after watching this, please just give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Audio sync. Hey, what is up guys? So what happens if you want to shift at a little bit higher than 2500 RPM? Testing. A few people have asked how I do these in-car camera shots. So here's what the rig looks like. I've got a dual suction cup mount up here on the window. Then I've got my Canon 70D upside down right there. I've got the Rode LavLink receiver on the camera right there. And then I'm actually filming this on another 70D, which is the one that was under the seat, filming the pedal. So that's what this in-car setup looks like, in case you guys were wondering.